So, welcome to Liberal Viewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I've got more than 30 clips on a few different topics, what I think should be a really interesting show tonight. As always, this is my weekly broadcast of the best clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the corporate media here in the United States, along with a little political comedy and along with my commentary between the clips. Though NBC didn't broadcast Meet the Press this week because of French Open tennis, I'll be using clips from the Sunday morning news shows on the other four of the regular Big Five outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News. No NBC this week, like I said. And I'll also have a few quasi-news clips from Friday night's Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO. I'll be using the clips to cover a couple quick topics at the end, like minimum wage and open carry gun rights in restaurants, and even Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign possibilities. But I'm going to start the show and spend almost all of the time on the show tonight with what was the main topic on all the Sunday morning shows this morning, the growing controversy over the release of American prisoner of war Bowe Bergdahl from Taliban captivity, which seems to have become especially controversial, as Bill Maher noticed in his monologue last Friday night on HBO's Real Time over in this clip.
Something happened this week that in the past was always completely not controversial. We brought home a prisoner of war, Bowe Bergdahl is his name, from the Afghanistan war, the only one that was over there. Of course, if you saw Fox News, you saw what really happened. Obama surrendered to the Taliban.
So yeah, I'm going to get a little more into how the Fox News coverage was incredibly biased on the whole release of the prisoner of war Bowe Bergdahl from Afghanistan and the trade with the Taliban prisoners. But there was actually some breaking news this morning on all the news shows. They talked about this, and I'm going to show one report on it from Martha Raddatz over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Martha Raddatz, I think, her current title is Global Affairs Correspondent, but she used to be their Pentagon military correspondent, and she has a lot of good military contacts. So she had the story that all the other networks had the same story about what Bowe Bergdahl was saying about his treatment in captivity, and I'll talk about that a little more after I show that clip here.
Bowe Bergdahl is doing remarkably well physically, but he is now telling staff at the hospital in Landstuhl, Germany, that he spent time in a cage and that he is still not ready to cope with a family reunion.
It was after an escape attempt that Bergdahl was kept in a small metal cage in the dark, according to a senior official. But his physical recovery is going well, the New York Times saying he has problems only with his skin and gums. Yet a senior official says the 28-year-old soldier is not yet mentally prepared to see his parents, and he has no idea the firestorm his release has created. It is hard to believe that just over a week ago, Bowe Bergdahl's parents were celebrating. This morning, there have been threats against the family's lives, hundreds of emails and phone calls. The threat so serious, the FBI has been called in. One saying, "I'd be ashamed to say he is from your town, needs to be shot," and his dad right along with him. Taliban lovers.
That's pretty nasty stuff there, and the threats against Bowe Bergdahl and his family and the overreaction of the right wing was covered on all the programs, except, of course, Fox News. That's the one Sunday morning news program this morning where they never mentioned the threats against the family. And that may be because some of the things they've been doing on Fox News this week have probably stoked those threats against the family. And I'm going to show a couple clips this week from CNN's Reliable Sources, which is a media analysis show, so I don't often show clips from it because it's not so much newsmakers, it's more analysis of the media, which is what I'm doing, so it'd be like too much meta-analysis. But first I'm going to show a clip from the new host, or he's not that new anymore, Brian Stelter, who has taken over for Howard Kurtz, and he's infinitely better than Howard Kurtz, who has moved over to Fox News, where I think his sympathies were for a long time. So anyway, here's Brian Stelter showing a clip of Bill O'Reilly stoking the negative feelings against the family of POW Bowe Bergdahl over in this clip.
After the prisoner swap, this story got personal and political fast.
But it is Robert Bergdahl, the father, who is also engendering some controversy. He has learned to speak Pashto, the language of the Taliban, and looks like a Muslim. He's also somewhat sympathetic to Islam, actually thanking Allah right in front of the president.
Thank you, Bill O'Reilly, for demonstrating how to conduct a smear campaign against a military family.
So yeah, obviously I like that clip from reliable sources, but you know, I watched a couple things. I'm not a regular watcher of Bill O'Reilly's show, the O'Reilly Factor anymore. I mean, I don't subject myself to it on a regular basis, but I did sort of catch a little of it when he, not only that clip, but the next day he like doubled down on it and said, well, I said he had this beard that made him look like a Muslim, and it's true, he looks like a Muslim. And I've seen some people say that he looks more like he should be on Duck Dynasty than a Muslim. And also, what would be, how, and the thing Bill O'Reilly kept saying is it's inappropriate, you know, to look like a Muslim there. But what if he actually were a Muslim? How inappropriate would that be if he actually were a Muslim and was going to the White House to meet with the president about his son being a prisoner of war? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he could be a Muslim. And as far as looking like a Muslim, that is just ridiculous. And there's actually a quote over on CNN State of the Union. Candy Crowley had on this retired general, I believe his name is Mathis. Is it Jim? Yeah, James Mathis, who has been sort of a liaison with the family and knows the family of Bowe Bergdahl pretty well. And he sort of commented on that and the hair comments in a clip that I'll talk about a little more after I show it here.
About the sergeant and about his parents. There's criticism that his father's beard made him look like Taliban, that he has been sympathetic to terrorists and in sympathy with his son's captors. There are those who object to the fact that he spoke Pashtun to his son in the Rose Garden. You know these people personally. Tell me about the parents.
Well, these are two salt-of-the-earth people. They're regular old Americans. I think most of us got over judging people by the length of their hair by about 1975 in this country. They have been through an extremely coercive experience. Just think where you and I have been, Candy, for the last 4 or 5 years, and thinking of every day in their position, wondering if they're going to get that knock on the door saying that this enemy has killed their son. So you can imagine what it's like to have gone through something like this for them. And I think a certain amount of compassion is appropriate for a family that's been through this.
So yeah, I like that comment from retired General James Mathis there, talking about how I think our country got over people having long hair being controversial in like the mid-1970s, but the worst nasty bias over on Fox News, I thought, was the way they impugned Bowe Bergdahl himself for this really poorly sourced report that he had converted to Islam while he was a prisoner, which, I mean, even if that happened, it might be kind of understandable, as I'll talk about in a minute. But first, I'm going to show this clip from, this is the second reliable sources clip I want to show, where Brian Stelter has also Washington Post's Ryan Lizza on to talk about how James Rosen on Fox News ran this story. And Ryan Lizza starts off saying these nice things about James Rosen just because he was the unfair target of NSA or Obama administration spying on him, and I'll talk about that a little more, or about the whole thing after I show that clip here.
Some of the graphics from Fox News on Friday. One of the banners said, Bergdahl converted to Islam. A lot of this was based on reporting from a secret document obtained from a private intelligence company that has not been proven from other sources, that the U.S. government has not corroborated. Ryan, when you saw this report on Thursday, when you read about it, what was your reaction to it?
Look, I want to say, first of all, that James Rosen, the reporter who wrote the original story, I've known him for a long time, and I think he's a very good reporter. I was one of his most vocal defenders over an issue of controversy that he was involved in last year.
Yes.
But this report does not meet the bar I've been a journalist for 17 years, and the sourcing on this report, I can't think of an outlet I've ever been associated with that would have reported this. This is hearsay from terrorists passed through an ex-felon, and then, and then to the American people.
And let me add one more detail to that about what it's like to be in captivity. I want to share a story from 2006 that I wrote on my blog, TV Newser, at the time. Here's the headline: Stephen Olaf forced to convert to Islam at gunpoint on video. Stephen Olaf were Fox News employees, Steve Centani and his producer. They were taken hostage for several weeks in Gaza. They appeared to convert to Islam on video. They said that they did it at gunpoint, under threat of death, and later, of course, said it was untrue. For Fox to go off at length talking about this idea of him converting to Islam without knowing strikes me as particularly unfair, given that situation in 2006.
And yes, it also strikes me as particularly unfair that Fox News would run this whole he converted to Islam story when one of their reporters and producers was kidnapped by Islamists in, I think it was in Gaza, or I think it had more to do with the Palestinians than with Afghanistan, but that they were forced to convert to Islam on camera, like he said there, and yet Fox News still ran this story. I thought was pretty amazing. And even over on their supposedly straight news program, Fox News Sunday, you can see Chris Wallace raises this issue with their paid military consultant, retired General Jack Keane, which I'll talk about a little more after I show that clip here.
Talk about one thing if he's a deserter, another if he's a defector. We got reports from James Rosen this week based on intel reports that were given to the military at the time that indicated that Bergdahl did try to escape at least twice, was severely punished, put in a cave, but that at a later point during his 5 years of captivity that he declared himself a warrior for jihad. How does the military sort that out?
The primary evidence we're going to use is certainly him. And we do have a single source reporting on everything you just described. We have multi-source reporting is the process we go through. We want to confirm a single source, particularly human sources with paid informants, which are largely what this is. Multi-sources have confirmed that he did escape. We haven't been able to confirm that there's been multiple escapes, or we have not been able to confirm, which is a violation of the code of conduct, that he sought favor from the enemy, which the single source indicates he did, or that he was in fact collaborating with the enemy, which the single source indicates that he did. An experienced, sophisticated interrogator will get to the bottom of this, I'm absolutely convinced.
So remember what retired General Jack Keane said there on Fox News about how Bowe Bergdahl is the primary source and that an experienced interrogator will get to the bottom of it because he's the primary source about what happened, because that'll be important in a clip I show in a couple minutes. But I think the fact that Fox News is sticking to this story about impugning him with whether he converted to Islam, and they seem to be in an earlier clip. Well, I won't get into that, but because I didn't show that clip, but they are definitely still carrying this whole attack on Bowe Bergdahl and his captivity. And I want to show a clip actually from Face the Nation. They had this journalist on, David Rohde, who was a prisoner of the same Taliban and Haqqani people that Bowe Bergdahl was a prisoner of, and he talked about what the conditions were like and what Bowe Bergdahl's state of mind is probably like based on his experiences, which I thought was really relevant, and I'll talk about that a little more after I show that clip here.
It sounds very credible to me. I was kidnapped by the exact same Taliban faction. This is the Haqqani network. They work very closely with the Pakistani military. I was able to escape. I had an Afghan help me take me to a Pakistani military base. Bowe Bergdahl didn't have that. So the reports are credible. And I also think Bowe Bergdahl needs to answer why he walked off that base. But I would really caution Americans. This is, there's all these rumors that came out during my case, and many of them were not true. And it's really important to sort of wait and get the facts here. A lot of the reporting on this story has been way off, and we need to sort of hear from Bowe Bergdahl about, what happened that night. And just on another note, I still today, 5 years later, feel tremendous regret for going to an interview with the Taliban, getting kidnapped, and what I put my family through. Whatever caused Bowe Bergdahl to walk off that base, you know, did he desert? Did he have a mental breakdown? He will regret this for the rest of his life, I guarantee you.
Yeah, and for all the people who are attacking Bowe Bergdahl, that last point seems to be the thing that has the most evidence behind it from all the reporting I've seen. You know, I don't want to speculate about what's going on in Bowe Bergdahl's head, which is something that I think too many people have been doing on the news programs I watch, but I have seen, you know, the fact that he hasn't talked to his parents yet, I think seems to make it look like he is feeling really guilty. And there was one other thing I want to show. This is some reporting from Raddatz that I didn't hear anywhere else about his state of mind, about how guilty he feels, you know, because nobody knows why he walked off that base, but it's pretty sure that he walked off voluntarily, so he must feel really responsible for the terrible conditions he was in for 5 years, because he voluntarily, for a reason we don't know, walked off that base. And something that shows that he is feeling really guilty that I only saw from Raddatz on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos is over in this clip.
We have learned that Bergdahl does not want to be called sergeant. He was promoted automatically during his captivity. He is telling staff he did not earn it. And George, it's still not clear when he'll be back to the United States, but he will not go directly home. He'll go to Brooke Army Medical Center in Texas.
Yeah, they're going to take it step by step. But he's showing great self-awareness there.
He truly is. He's showing self-awareness and sort of the military discipline still by saying, I don't deserve to be called sergeant.
Okay, Martha.
So yeah, it sounds like Bowe Bergdahl is feeling guilty about something there, if he doesn't want the promotions that he automatically got while he was being held in custody. And I guess we'll see what happens when he gets to Brooke Army Medical Center, which is in San Antonio. I actually, when my father was a doctor in the Army for a couple years when I was a kid, I lived in San Antonio at Fort Sam Houston, where Brooke Army Medical Center is. So that's something I'm familiar with. But before I leave the whole guilt of Bowe Bergdahl topic, subtopic of the whole Bowe Bergdahl controversy, I want to show one of the most ridiculous comments I saw on the Sunday morning news shows from Peggy Noonan, who I've seen many ridiculous comments from. She used to be an aide to Ronald Reagan, apparently helped him write speeches. I think the Shining City on the Hill line was, I think that was her line, supposedly. Anyway, she said that the thing that she finds suspicious about Bowe Bergdahl is that it's been 8 days and he still hasn't talked to any reporters. And then she makes that sound a little more reasonable by talking about Vietnam people. But these are people who were like held with other prisoners, while Bowe Bergdahl, from what I understand, was only with Taliban people. He had no cellmates, no one who spoke English. And anyway, I'll talk about that a little more after I show this kind of silly Peggy Noonan clip from Face the Nation here.
As Senator Feinstein, I think, between the lines was more or less saying that. There is one way, it seems to me, that immediately you might clear up some of the facts. That would be Bowe Bergdahl, himself in a hospital in Germany for 8 days now, meet with the press, with some reporters or one reporter. It is odd that he appears to be being kept in isolation. I spoke last night to a Vietnam prisoner of war. He was there almost 7 years, abused, beaten, all the terrible things. When those guys were finally sprung, they were taken out, put in a hospital for a day or two, put in Clark Air Force Base for a day or two, and then they were sent home. They had been treated terribly. They were all wounded one way or another, but they were allowed to speak freely to the press, immediately call their family. The Army set it up. It seems to me strange that this man, Mr. Bergdahl, is being kept away from clearing up all of the questions about who he is, what he did, and what happened to him while he was there.
So yeah, I thought that was kind of ridiculous to hear Peggy Noonan say that it's suspicious that Bowe Bergdahl hasn't talked to a reporter 8 days after he was held in like solitary confinement by the Taliban for 5 years. And you know, maybe there are some Vietnam prisoners of war who talk to the press quicker, but everyone is different. And it sounds like he has a lot of issues, and he was already apparently having some problems when he walked off his base, so I wouldn't be that surprised that he would have more issues than some other people might have. And anyway, that was kind of ridiculous. Oh, and speaking of kind of silly clips, I want to show a clip just of a question that Chris Wallace asked over on Fox News. You know, Fox News only had the one military expert on there, retired General Jack Keane, who I already showed that he was pretty much in the anti-Obama administration column. But here's a question that Chris Wallace teed up for me. I'm not even going to show the answer, but the reason I took this clip is because Chris Wallace, in the question, he actually shows pictures of the 5 Taliban released from Guantanamo and refers to them as, and you can look at it yourself, I think it's just like a little phrasing mistake, but he calls them supporters of the Obama administration, or defenders of the Obama administration, I believe is the exact phrase. As we can see, check out the clip over here.
Let's talk about another aspect of that, and that is the Taliban 5, the 5 detainees, Taliban leaders, who we swapped for Bergdahl. Defenders of the administration, we have them up on the screen here, say these are 5 graybeards who have been off the battlefield for more than a decade. And President Obama says that the risk is acceptable. Here he is.
We have released, both under my administration and previous administrations, a large number of former Taliban fighters, some of whom returned to the battlefield. But by definition, you don't do prisoner exchanges with your friends. You do them with your enemies.
General, realistically, how big a threat are these 5 men?
So yeah, I'll get back to the threat of the released Taliban prisoners in a minute, but was I wrong, or did at one point he have pictures of 5 Taliban commanders up who were released from Guantanamo, and he referred to them as defenders of the administration? I could be wrong, but if you look at that clip, I think that it was just an innocent error, I'm sure, but I believe that is what Chris Wallace said on Fox News Sunday as the premise of his question there to retired General Jack Keane. But I also want to show something else that Fox News did that nobody else seemed to do. The campaign against the Obama administration release of, or negotiation to release of Bowe Bergdahl on the right wing from Republicans, and especially on Fox News, one of the aspects of it was sort of kind of a swift boat thing. I mean, it's not quite as bad as the swift boating of John Kerry when he was running for president, because I don't think John Kerry did anything wrong that deserved the swift boating. Bowe Bergdahl may have actually done something wrong. You know, he left his post, which is a violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice or whatever, and he may be subject to court-martial. But Fox News had on, over the week, there were about a half-dozen members of his unit who were really mad at him, and you can understand why they might be, because apparently it was kind of a forlorn unit out in the middle of nowhere, and after he left, they had to spend a lot of time looking for him, and they never really liked him anyway. And I think if you look at this one member, this medic, who of course is a soldier, who was in the unit with Bowe Bergdahl when Bowe Bergdahl left his post, you can see that he's already jumped to conclusions about what was in Bowe Bergdahl's head. And remember when I said to remember what Jack Keane said about retired General Jack Keane in a previous answer to Chris Wallace about how Bowe Bergdahl is the primary source of what happened and a good interrogator will get him out of it? Well, someone from the State Department said the same thing, that Bowe Bergdahl was going to be the primary source of what happened. And Fox News, when they talked to this former member of Bowe Bergdahl's unit, they turned that around to say they're questioning your whether you knew what was going on in your own unit. And you can see that in this question, or in this clip that I'll talk about a little more after I show it here.
Josh, members of your unit, including you, have been speaking out since Bergdahl was released, and the administration has also been pushing back at some of the comments that you and your colleagues have made. Here is a spokeswoman for the State Department on some of the comments your unit has made. Take a look.
You've had all this time, 5 years, to determine whether he was a deserter or not. That's a long time.
He's been in captivity, Lucas. I think he's probably the person who knows best what happened on that night.
Well, I think his squad mates have the best indication what
I don't
happened
think
that
that's the case.
I don't think that's the case. Josh, your reaction to hearing somebody from the State Department's podium say that in effect you guys don't know what went on, and some on background have been tougher, talking about smearing Bergdahl or swift-boating Bergdahl.
I don't know what people want to, or what certain people want to hear. I was there. Everybody else that I've been, that we've been talking with or to or whatever, there's been 6 of us primarily. We were there. This isn't some story that we're making up. We were there for the night Bergdahl left. We were there for the morning when we realized he wasn't there. We were there for the following 90 days of absolute just agony that Bergdahl put us through. This isn't second or third-hand reports or accounts. We were there running missions every single day to try and find Bowe Bergdahl.
The Army asked all of you to sign non-disclosure agreements while Bergdahl was in captivity, I guess because obviously they didn't want you saying things that might endanger him. Did you sign one of those non-disclosure agreements, and why are you speaking out now, sir?
I did. The main reason I'm speaking out now is because over the last 5 years, there's been a lot of kind of mixed details about what happened with Bowe Bergdahl, and the American public needs to be educated that Bowe Bergdahl is not a hero, that he did not serve with honor or any kind of distinction, that he is a deserter that purposefully and willfully walked away from his post, and he needs to be held 100% accountable for putting the lives of not only myself and my platoon and my unit and everybody in eastern Afghanistan in danger. He needs to be held accountable for that.
So I think it's pretty understandable why that guy, that soldier's name is, let me think I get it right, Joshua Cornelison. And I think it's completely understandable that he would feel that way, that he knew Bowe Bergdahl, he didn't like Bowe Bergdahl, and then he had to do all this extra work when Bowe Bergdahl went missing, and so did all of his friends, and they weren't really happy to be where they were to begin with, probably, based on some of the things I've heard about that unit in other stories. So I think it's pretty understandable, and I'm not going to fault that guy for having that opinion, and he certainly has a right to it. But then when he says that he's a deserter and that he purposely and willfully walked off the base, well, that's jumping to conclusions that they still have, that's the purpose of the court-martial, is to determine that. And while I don't fault this guy who served with Bowe Bergdahl from having, since he knew the guy, and he's probably jumping to conclusions based on intimate knowledge of Bowe Bergdahl, that doesn't mean that his conclusion is correct. And that was one of the problems with the Fox News coverage, and so I wanted to show that. And I also want to show, I was saying how Fox News had this retired General Jack Keane on to be anti-Obama, and then I showed how CNN had this retired General James Mathis on, who was a liaison with the Bergdahl family, and he was on to say, things that were positive about this prisoner exchange. Well, CNN not only had someone pro-Obama on, they also had this really anti-Obama guy. And actually, Jim Mathis isn't that pro-Obama. I saw one of the chyrons they put up. He actually is working at the Hoover Institute, which is this conservative think tank. But this next guy who CNN had on, Jerry Boykin, he was actually chastised by the George W. Bush administration for making all these comments while he was still a general about how the war on terror was actually a war between Christianity and Islam, which went even too far for George W. Bush, because he was always saying, it's not a war on Islam. And he had very negative things to say about Bowe Bergdahl and the release of Bowe Bergdahl, and how Bowe Bergdahl was a traitor, and he almost went so far as to say that Bowe Bergdahl should be shot, as I'll talk about a little more after I show that clip over here.
Well, I think this swap has to be put in perspective. First of all, I have a high regard for my esteemed colleagues, but I disagree with them. because I think that he is a deserter. I think that all the evidence is there. I've never seen people line up against an individual in their platoon the way they have in this situation, and I am not dismissing what I believe is truthful testimony by some honorable men that served, and I believe he was a deserter. Desertion in time of war is punishable by death. So what we did was we traded...
Well, I'm sorry, are you suggesting that if it's found to be that he deserted when the Army does its investigation, that's...
No, that's not my point. My point is that we have traded for a guy that is guilty of a crime that is actually punishable by death. We traded him for 5 of the worst Taliban leaders in Guantanamo, 2 of which are mass murderers, all of which will be back on the battlefield, and all of which will be threats not only to Americans there, but to the Afghan people, because before we got there, they were killing Afghans in brutal ways. So I don't think that we came out ahead on this thing, and I question the very ethics of this kind of trade.
So yeah, there is retired General Jerry Boykin, who I think now works for the Family Research Council, which is an extreme right-wing organization, saying that Bowe Bergdahl is a deserter and almost deserves to be shot. And then he also talked about these 5, the Taliban 5, as they're referring to them in right-wing circles and on Fox News, and the cost of releasing them. And I'm going to talk about that a little more after. I want to show one clip about the release of the Taliban 5. I think this is my last Fox News clip. No, there's going to be one more after this, but I showed a bunch of Fox News bias clips. They did actually have this former George W. Bush Attorney General Michael Mukasey on to say one good thing about the Obama administration, that when he released the Taliban 5 prisoners, that he did violate the law, but he violated a law that wasn't constitutional because, and I talked about this a little bit on LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup last Sunday, that this law that says they have to tell Congress 30 days before releasing any prisoners from Guantanamo, that is probably an overreach of congressional authority against the president's authority as commander-in-chief. And of course, the Attorney General from the George W. Bush administration found a lot more extensive powers of the executive, to torture people and to do warrantless wiretapping before Congress passed an amendment to FISA that allowed it. And so, of course, if he's going to be at all consistent, he has to say that the president can release people from Guantanamo, whatever Congress says. And to his credit, former Bush Attorney General Michael Mukasey did say that over on the clip from Fox News Sunday that you can see here.
Let's talk about another legal issue, and that is the one of congressional notification. When the president signed the Defense Authorization Act last year, it contained a provision that the administration must notify Congress not later than 30 days before the transfer or release of a prisoner from Guantanamo. Question, did the president break the law, or was that requirement an unconstitutional infringement on his executive powers?
Well, yes to both. He broke the law, but I believe that the law itself is unconstitutional. Article 2 makes him the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. This man, these people were in the custody of the armed forces. It gives him plenary authority to conduct foreign affairs. And to the extent that that statute purports to restrict his Article 2 power, I think it's unconstitutional. And he said so at the time that he signed it.
So I have to give former Attorney General Michael Mukasey credit for saying something, and I have to also point out some time when I actually agree with him, because I don't often agree with former Bush administration officials, but I do think that even though I disagree with how far they said executive power goes on the ability to torture and to listen, warrantless wiretapping and all that stuff, I do agree that it probably goes far enough to allow the president to transfer prisoners of war around without Congress being able to pass laws to stop him from doing it. And the reason is courts will normally say that it's a political question, and if Congress is really upset, they're constitutional remedy is impeachment, which of course they can do, and that issue has actually come up. Senator Lindsey Graham said that this last week that if President Obama transferred any more prisoners out of Guantanamo, that would be an impeachable offense. And in a clip that I'm not showing on Fox News Sunday, Michael Mukasey actually referred to that in terms of how that is actually legitimate, because the president can do things that are legal but are so awful that they still need to be impeachable. I think the example he used was if the president decided to pardon all the prisoners in federal prison, that would certainly be within his power under the Constitution, but the Congress still might want to impeach him because it would call into question his judgment and whether he should continue being president. And I mean, I suppose that example is kind of kind of accurate, but I also want to show over on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, they had the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers, who is always happy to find the president weak on being anti-terrorist, and did so in the case of this exchange of Bowe Bergdahl for the Taliban 5, or whatever you want to call them. And George Stephanopoulos asked him about Lindsey Graham's call for impeachment, and you can see Mike Rogers say, you know, it's a long road to get there, but he certainly didn't say it was impossible for impeachment, and I'll talk about that a little bit after I show that clip here.
Implications that have just occurred.
Final question. Lindsey Graham has raised the prospect of impeachment if President Obama releases more Guantanamo prisoners without approval from Congress. Should impeachment be on the table?
Well, again, that's a long way down this road, and the most disturbing part about this, George, is that in 2011, their answers to the questions about for a bipartisan opposition to this trade, by the way, was a whole series of things that had to happen. And one of them struck me, and it was really by the Secretary of State at that time, Hillary Clinton, said that if all of our conditions aren't met, then none of them will be met. And it was conditions like renouncing violence, adhering to the Afghan Constitution, and making sure that women are treated fairly in Afghanistan. We got none of that. I think that's where we ought to focus right now. We have made a serious geopolitical mistake. We've empowered the Taliban. The one thing that they wanted more than anything, George, was recognition from the U.S. government so they can use that to propagandize against areas that are unsecure still in Afghanistan. They got all of that.
I think that's kind of a massive overstatement of the effect of this deal. And I also think that the way they build up these prisoners in Guantanamo as being like so ultra dangerous, like I think there's a clip I'm not going to show. I think it was from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, where he said they referred to them as like the X-Men. You know, they're like it's releasing the X-Men for like Magneto from his plastic prison or something. But it's just not true. And the next clip I want to show here is actually let's see. The next clip is over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. They also had this quick story about Guantanamo and what has to happen for it to be closed. You know, the Obama administration promised to close Gitmo back, when he was running, and one of the first things when he came into office, and then like a year ago he recommitted to closing Guantanamo, and he appointed this special envoy for the closing of Guantanamo. His name is, I think, Clifford Sloan, and he was interviewed as part of this story about Guantanamo over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos by ABC reporter Byron Pitts. And here's a really short clip from that with an interesting answer from the special envoy to close Guantanamo here.
Meets U.S. security requirements. The Obama envoy tasked with closing down Gitmo says the other more dangerous detainees may need to be transferred to U.S. prisons. That would require a change in U.S. law.
So you believe at some point that some of the detainees at Guantanamo Bay will serve their time on U.S. soil?
Yes, I do.
I can hear some folks in Congress saying over my dead body.
In addition to other issues with Guantanamo. It is enormously expensive.
So that was kind of a badly cut interview at the end there, I thought, because his answer didn't really seem to address the question that Guantanamo is expensive, doesn't really answer the question about how Congress is so opposed. And that is also, of course, the main reason why Guantanamo hasn't been closed, is because Congress passed a law that made it virtually impossible to close Guantanamo. And I'm going to show I'm going to show one more clip from Fox News in a minute that ends with their reporter Catherine Herridge emphasizing how Congress is all upset and it's made the problem with closing Guantanamo worse. But first, I want to show this clip of how Congress is really, or some particular people in Congress are very upset with how the Obama administration handled this Bowe Bergdahl release and the trade for the Taliban prisoners. Apparently, the Obama administration didn't notify the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee and the ranking Republican, that's Dianne Feinstein and Saxby Chambliss, until Monday after the Bowe Bergdahl release was on Saturday. So they not only didn't hear about it beforehand, they heard about it like a day and a half later. They were like the last people who were informed. And I saw some story earlier in the week about how the White House apologized and said it was an oversight, but you can see Dianne Feinstein over on Face the Nation. She's still upset about it, and Bob Schieffer pointed out how she wasn't even briefed on the story that was coming out just this morning. The White House knew that she was coming on Face the Nation, but didn't brief her on the story about how Bowe Bergdahl was tried to escape and was tortured by being put in a cage. And anyway, I'll talk about that a little more after I show that clip over here.
Do you have any information about these latest reports that he tried to escape while in captivity and that as a result was put in a cage and tortured by the Taliban?
With respect to escape, no information but rumors. With respect to being tortured, this is the first I've heard of that.
Well, would anyone at the White House should have briefed you on this latest information? And I say that because our national security correspondent, David Martin, was checking this at the Pentagon this morning, and they were not confirming it, but they also were not waving him off reporting that story. I find it interesting that the administration knew you'd be coming out on Face the Nation this morning, that somebody didn't give you a tip that there's some new information here.
Well, you'd think so if there were new information. I just can't say, but I think this whole sort of deal has been one that the administration has kept very close, and in the eyes of many of us, too close. Because it has a long history going back to 2011 when it was part of a major reconciliation effort with the Taliban, and we were consulted, and the concern there was that the confidence building measure was up front, and that measure was the release of these 5 Taliban detainees. And there was feeling that if you release them up front, there would be no reconciliation. If you release them after progress or at the end and had the agreement to do so, that you might get a reconciliation agreement. And that subsequently apparently fell apart. So there are concerns over, and I heard John Kerry this morning say, don't worry about them in Doha. You can't help but worry about them in Doha. And we have no information on how the United States is actually going to see that they remain in Doha, that they make no comments, that they do no agitation. And another rumor is that one Taliban has apparently said that he would return to the battlefield. So it's a mixed bag at best.
So yeah, in a minute I'm going to show actually that John Kerry clip that Dianne Feinstein was responding to, where he says that we don't need to worry about the 5 Taliban who have been released to Doha, Qatar, Qatar or Gutter, or however you pronounce it. I've heard so many different pronunciations of Qatar. I think Qatar is the closest or most accurate one. But before I show that John Kerry clip where he says we don't have to worry about them, I also want to show. I said that was Dianne Feinstein, the Democratic chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And I also want to show the ranking Republican, Saxby Chambliss, also saying that he's all upset that he wasn't briefed by the Obama administration over in this clip.
Well, just like Dianne, I've heard rumors about the escape as far as keeping him in a cage and whatnot. I read about it in the press this morning. Nobody has made any effort to contact me from the administration, but then, you know, I learned about this after the fact. Dianne and I were both called on Monday night after Bergdahl was released on Saturday and told that it had happened. So this administration has acted very strangely about this, Bob, and it's kind of puzzling as to why they did not let us know in advance that this was going to happen.
Well, this.
So yeah, there is Republican Senator Saxby Chambliss saying that he is upset that he wasn't briefed, and he also responds or rebuts or argues with the two Obama administration reasons why they didn't tell members of Congress generally about the release before it happened, that it was an operation that was underway, and then also the health concerns that about Bowe Bergdahl, that he was going to be. First they were saying, the Obama administration said that they thought that he was in failing health, and then they thought that the Taliban might kill him if they found out that these negotiations were going on. And anyway, here is Republican Senator Saxby Chambliss doing his best to rebut those two administration arguments over on Face the Nation in this clip.
I think the administration was right in withholding information about this senator. At one point I was told yesterday, well, we don't ever brief the Congress when there's an operation underway. And so then there was another report that he was in bad health, and they had to do this quickly because of his health. Reports this morning are he's making a very good recovery, at least physically. They say he's now wearing his uniform up and around, walking around the hospital, talking to people there. But the report, at least in the Times, is but he's not ready, I guess you would say, emotionally. He has not talked to his parents yet, as far as we know.
Well, two things I would say. Number one, I can't imagine anybody in the administration being able to look the American public in the eye and saying we never brief members of Congress on ongoing operations. The classic example of that is the bin Laden operation. Dianne and I knew for months and months what was suspected relative to the location of bin Laden. We had a pretty good idea of what they were going to do, and I'll never forget the phone call I got from an excited Leon Panetta telling me that bin Laden had been taken down. Those types of things are briefed to us on a regular basis. Not a day goes by, Bob, that I don't get briefed on some classified aspect of our intelligence community, a lot of which is ongoing operations. Secondly, when Bergdahl was let go, what we were told and what the public was told is that because of a video that was made apparently in December of last year and viewed by the Department of Defense in January of this year, that Bergdahl looked like he had lost 10 to 15 pounds. He was in poor health, and they were concerned that if they did not make this exchange, that his life would be in danger as a result of bad health. Well, no intelligence supported that. And now they come back, and because he is in decent health considering where he's been, they've changed their story. They said, well, no, we suspect his life may be in danger if word got out of this pending possible trade that his life may be in danger. Again, I can just tell you there's no intelligence to support that, and Director Clapper has already made that same statement. So the whole scenario surrounding this is very, very strange.
So, yeah, the Republican senator is again supporting what Senator Dianne Feinstein, who, even though she's a Democrat, as I've said on previous episodes of Liberal Viewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup, she's the senator from my state of California, and she's almost a Republican in a lot of ways, especially in her views on intelligence matters. And I want to show, before I get to that clip from John Kerry talking about how we don't have to worry about the Taliban 5 being in Doha, Qatar. I'm going to show a clip from Dianne Feinstein, and then also this week with George Stephanopoulos news report from Brian Ross. But first, here's Dianne Feinstein saying that she's again unhappy that she hasn't been briefed, and she doesn't feel confident about what's going on with the Taliban 5 release because she hasn't been briefed. And I don't know, it may be, I noticed that Senator Dianne Feinstein never actually, I don't think she said the country Qatar. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think she may have just said Doha, so she didn't have to try to pronounce it. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but we'll see after we watch this clip from Dianne Feinstein about how she's not confident what's going to happen to the Taliban 5 when they end up in Doha in this clip.
But I can say that the way it started out in 2011, these 5 were to be held in house arrest in Doha. Now, there is no house arrest. They have the country, which is very small, to be about in. Secretary Kerry made a very strong statement this morning saying, oh, we have ways, and we will see that they do not defect, move, speak, whatever, and we'll see.
You're not as comfortable with that, though, apparently, as he is.
Well, it's hard to be comfortable when you really haven't been briefed on the intricacies of carrying out this agreement.
Did he?
So yeah, that was another part where Senator Dianne Feinstein made pretty clear that she was pissed off that she was not briefed by the Obama administration before this happened, or this morning before she came on Face the Nation about apparently she is not in the loop or is having some problems, or at least on this particular issue. And before I get to the statement from former Senator and now Secretary of State John Kerry talking about the conditions of the released Taliban 5 in Doha, Qatar, I want to show this one clip from the reporter for ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. His name is Brian Ross, and he actually makes it sound like they're all on a luxury vacation, which, if you watch the clip, I am not exaggerating, as you can see over here.
Happens next. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, George. It's been a week now since the 5 senior Taliban leaders arrived here for what is, in effect, a year-long all-expenses-paid vacation for them and their extended families in the midst of luxury in this tiny, prosperous Gulf Coast country. Government officials say the former detainees are free to travel wherever they like in Qatar, a country with the highest per capita income in the world and the 5-star hotels and other trappings of wealth and prosperity to prove it. Since their arrival to a hero's welcome 7 days ago, the 5 former detainees have been kept hidden from view by the Qatar government and told not to talk with any reporters. The Taliban operate here out of a villa in an upscale residential area, and as part of the deal, Qatar will provide the 5 men with their own well-protected villas where they'll be free to talk or meet with whomever they like. The Qatar government says it will closely monitor all of their communications and movements. And in a statement over the weekend, their first, the 5 men said they will comply with the agreement not to return to Afghanistan or the battlefield over the next year. But of course, they'll be free to do just that in only 51 weeks from now. George?
So yeah, it's not just Fox News. I notice a lot of the spin that I see on Fox News also sort of leaks over into ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos somehow. I'm not sure why that is, but there you have that. And for the comment, I said I was going to show the comment from Secretary of State John Kerry that Dianne Feinstein was responding to in those clips from Face the Nation. He gave an interview to CNN reporter Elise Labot, I think L-A-B-O-T, I think that's how you pronounce it. Her interview was shown over on CNN's State of the Union, and I'm going to show a couple clips from it. Here's the one where John Kerry says that they're going to be under really strong supervision, and if they stray, we're going to be able to take them out. That this is the Taliban 5 in response to the question about whether they're, taking luxury vacations, basically, from CNN reporter Elise Labat over in this clip.
We're told that these 5 can roam around the country. Pretty vague on what those restrictions and monitoring are. I mean, tell me about that. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most confident, how confident are you that the Qataris are going to be able to keep a close eye on these guys?
Well, they're not the only ones keeping an eye on them.
The U.S. is going to be monitoring them?
I'm just telling you, they're not the only ones keeping an eye on them, and we have confidence in those requirements. And if they're violated, then we have ability to be able to do things. I'm
what
not.
Kind of things?
I am not, Elise. I'm not telling you that they don't have some ability at some point to go back and get involved, but they also have an ability to get killed doing that. And I don't think anybody should doubt the capacity of the United States of America to protect Americans.
You meaning you
Nobody.
would kill them?
No one should doubt the capacity of America to protect Americans. And the president has always said he will do whatever is necessary in order to protect the United States of America. So these guys pick a fight with us in the future or now or at any time at enormous risk. And we have proven what we're capable of doing with al-Qaeda. Let me just finish. With al-Qaeda, the core al-Qaeda in West Pakistan, Afghanistan.
So there's the John Kerry statement that Dianne Feinstein was responding to. I don't know, maybe I should have switched the order around on those, but as I order these as best I can, kind of in the last 45 minutes before I broadcast the show usually. So I wanted to show you that clip, and then I want to show you a few clips of Republicans who were also critical of the release of these Taliban prisoners from Guantanamo. First, I'm going to show John McCain over on, also on CNN's State of the Union, talking to Candy Crowley about how this deal was, these Taliban 5 were previously deemed too dangerous to release, and he just found it too high a price, which I'll talk about a little more after I show that clip here.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't release these men.
Ever?
But second of all, I would release people who are not these men. They were judged time after time during their confinement in Guantanamo. They were evaluated and judged as too great a risk to release. That was a judgment made about them, not by me, but by the people who are evaluate these people. So they were judged too great a risk. They're committed to returning the fight. They're in Qatar for only 1 year. They're the leadership. Mullah Omar just got his cabinet back. So I am saying again, I think we should really do everything we can in our power to win the release of any American being held, but not at the expense of the lives and well-being of their fellow servicemen and women.
So yeah, that whole Mullah Omar got his cabinet back. I think that might be an overstatement of the value of these particular 5 prisoners from Guantanamo. But at least John McCain did say that doing something to try to get the release of a prisoner is worthwhile. And I thought there was an interesting question that Candy Crowley posed to him, since John McCain was a prisoner of war for about 5 years in Vietnam, as to whether he thought that Bowe Bergdahl was worthy of our efforts to gain his release. And John McCain at least did say that, but then he went in again to how the price paid was too high. And anyway, I'll talk about that a little more after I show that clip and this interesting question from CNN anchor Candy Crowley over here.
With this, first of all, I think all of our audience and most of America understands the courage and the valor and the honor that you served for America in Vietnam as a prisoner of war, in part, for more than 5 years. So in the spirit of that, I want to ask you this question. Let's assume that everything that's been put out there about Bowe Bergdahl this week is true, and we can't assume that because we don't know, that he went AWOL, that he may have wanted to defect, that perhaps he may have wanted to desert, that perhaps he converted to Islam while in captivity. If you look at all those things and say, maybe they're true, does that make this young man less worthy of rescuing from his circumstances than the young John McCain as a POW?
No, it does not, Candy. We have the obligation to do whatever we can to bring any of our captured servicemen and women back. But the question is at what cost? Whether it would put the lives of other American men and women who are serving in danger. And in my view, clearly, this would. And by the way, the President and John Kerry are confident that if these guys re-enter the fight, one of them has already announced that he will re-enter the fight, 30% of those who have been released from Guantanamo have re-entered the fight, and we certainly haven't been able to kill all of them. So what we're doing here is reconstituting the Taliban government. The same guys that are mass murderers, one killed thousands of Shiite Muslims. These are the people that used to take women into the soccer stadium in Kabul and hang them from the goalposts.
So remember that thing that John McCain said about how estimates say that 30% of the released Taliban prisoner or Guantanamo prisoners have returned to the fight, and we certainly haven't been able to kill all of them, because that is going to be almost completely contradicted by a Fox News clip I'm going to play in just a couple minutes. And I hate that return to the battlefield phrase too, because what about the people who were never on the battlefield and ended up in Guantanamo by mistake, and then after being held without charges for several years were radicalized and then got to the battlefield for the first time because they were radicalized, or all the people who were radicalized by Guantanamo itself, and the way that the United States has not lived up to the principles that are supposedly our liberal values by holding people in indefinite detention without charge and without calling them prisoners of war, which is what I talked about last week. And you know, in that clip last week that I excerpted and made my clip of the week on Monday, or ended up being Tuesday afternoon when I got it uploaded because I was working on all this copyright stuff, but I criticized CNN's Candy Crowley for not knowing about how the Taliban were the rulers of Afghanistan at the beginning of that conflict, and how that made them a party to the conflict, and Taliban military people as prisoners of war. But I also said that I respected Candy Crowley as a journalist, and she's willing to confront politicians with the facts. And she had John McCain on, and you know, John McCain is so against this release of Bowe Bergdahl and this prisoner exchange, even though back in February he was interviewed by Anderson Cooper and said that he agreed with it, except he'd need to see the details. And the details weren't not these 5 Taliban people, because that had just come out in the press as a possibility right before he did the interview in the day or two before. So that was already on the table, and Candy Crowley kind of confronted him with that in this. I think this may be the last John McCain clip I want to show over here.
Senator, there have been several rounds this week between a statement you made 4 months ago and what you're saying now. I just want to remind quickly our viewers of something that you told our Anderson Cooper in February, and then ask you something.
Now this idea is for an exchange of prisoners for our American fighting men. I would be inclined to support such a thing, depending on a lot of the details.
So, Senator, at the time that you made that statement, you said depending on the details, and we know that you don't like the details of this. The names of these particular prisoners were already out there, had been out there in print, apparently had been talked about in relationship to the exchange, not just these confidence building, but in relationship to this exchange. Are you saying now that there are others at Guantanamo that you would have released instead? And what happens if no one but these 5 are acceptable to the folks that were holding Sergeant Bergdahl?
Well, first of all, as who the individuals were, I never signed off on those individuals, and that's why I said the details. The details, of course, that they're able to re-enter the fight. The details as to who they are and what they've done. The details of, I believe that there are other prisoners, some of whom we have already released, that we could have released that in exchange. These 5 are the top 5 picked by the Taliban, not by us, but by the Taliban. So all I can say is you can have a certain price, but it's exacerbated by the president's decision to take everybody out of Afghanistan, and these people will be going back as the Taliban leadership, and that will, of course, in my view, cause another replay of Iraq, which I thought he should have paid attention to.
Well, precisely.
I don't know if Iraq belongs in this discussion here, but Republican John McCain was not the only Republican out there on the Sunday morning shows this morning attacking the Obama administration still for this release of Bowe Bergdahl, and especially for the price paid, the 5 Taliban. I want to show another clip of Republican Mike Rogers, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, basically making a similar point. That was CNN's State of the Union with Candy Crowley. Here's ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, where George Stephanopoulos got Mike Rogers to attack the release of the Taliban 5 over in this clip.
You've been very clear. You said you would not have made the trade. But what about that bedrock principle of the soldier's creed, I will never leave a fallen comrade?
Well, but the problem, George, is that this hostilities haven't stopped. Normally, that's if the hostilities have stopped, there are other options. And this was what's so angered for those of us who have followed this for years. This was not the only option that was available.
The administration says it was.
No, well, the administration has this theory that you're either with them or you're for thermonuclear war, and there's nothing in between. That's just wrong. And so the reason they avoided Congress, this isn't about we didn't get invited to the party, so we should have our feelings hurt, is because we can empower all of the people, diplomats who disagreed with this decision, intelligence folks who disagree with the decision, military folks. That voice never got heard in the final discussions leading up to this deal. That's why you engage with Congress. We can empower those voices. We can get those questions asked so you don't make a mistake that actually might jeopardize diplomats, aid workers, and soldiers as we move forward. And that's...
I don't know. I think Mike Rogers is hypes the harm that a lot of things are posing to Americans, and many things having to do with terrorism and Islam, and clips I've shown on LiberalViewer Sunday Live clip roundup for quite a long time. And I think this is another place where he has overhyped the threat here. And that whole thing where he said that hostilities aren't over, well, we're going to be down to under 10,000 troops in Afghanistan by the end of this year, assuming we even get the status of forces agreement with a new Afghan president, which I've talked about in previous episodes of LiberalViewer Sunday Live clip roundup. But if you look at it that way, that we're going to really have a lot fewer combat troops very quickly, hostilities are kind of ending. And I'm going to show another clip from Secretary of State John Kerry addressing that point specifically and really saying hostilities are ending, over also from an interview on CNN's State of the Union with their reporter Elise, her name is Elise Labott over here.
Number 2, we are ending our combat role. Our combat role in Afghanistan is over. We're going to have very few, people in that kind of position on occasion where, but I honestly, I just think that's a lot of baloney, to be truthful with you. And to whatever degree it may be true, they will wind up putting themselves at the mercy of those people who are very effective, who are there, who will deal with those matters.
So yeah, there's former Senator and now Secretary of State John Kerry reiterating that these 5 Taliban, or former Taliban now, I guess returned to Taliban leadership, possibly the prisoners released from Guantanamo, how if they do return to the fight that they can be targeted. I don't know if he's talking about drones or That's one of the things that Bill Maher said on HBO's Real Time, a clip I'm not going to show, although I'm going to show a couple more of Bill Maher clips before I finish the show. But he said something about how at Guantanamo we couldn't target them with drones, and now we can. So that was something I thought is an interesting response to all this, is to use the Obama administration's infamous use of drones that so many people are, both on the progressive left and even like Rand Paul and the libertarian right have faulted the Obama administration to use that as like now a talking point to say that these Taliban prisoners released from Guantanamo aren't really that dangerous. And I also want to show one more clip from Mike Rogers where he starts theorizing about how many of the Taliban prisoners are actually going to return to the battlefield, which for some reason it sounded like a Trident gum commercial, as I'll explain after I show that clip here.
Well, and we're not even sure they'll wait a year. Their real value in the next 51 weeks is propaganda by the Taliban, and we've already seen that start. So they can meet with Taliban political leaders in Qatar. They can have family members travel to Qatar and back to Pakistan and Afghanistan. And we believe that's certainly an opportunity for a courier network to get them prepared for what's next. I don't think you'll see any operational activity right now by them. They're smart enough to know better, but it allows them to prepare for what's next, and that's going to be join the fight against what Americans are left in Afghanistan in 51 weeks.
You're convinced of that?
I am convinced, absolutely convinced of that. We've already seen both in their rhetoric and their actions, and certainly the information that we see coming out of the Taliban, including the Haqqani network in Pakistan, would suggest that's absolutely going to happen. Maybe not all five, but I do believe 3 for sure, likely 4, and that 5th one is on the fence, but I will probably play some role in active
But is there
operations.
anything we can
4 out of 5 former Guantanamo prisoners agree. That's the Trident gum commercial tie in there. I don't know. Maybe I'm stretching a little for that one, but he definitely seems upset about the release of the Guantanamo prisoners. And the other clip I want to show on that, this is from that retired General Jim Mathis, actually pointing out that there is a military benefit from this swap of Guantanamo prisoners for Bowe Bergdahl, which I hadn't seen reported anywhere else, that I'll talk about a little more after I show that clip here.
Balance, and it's going to take some time to determine if the very heavy price, the very high price that we paid to get Bowe released was in the long term the right thing to do. But at the same time, we are quite capable of taking the fight back at these guys. And a point I would make here is that when General McChrystal or General Petraeus or General Allen, now General Dunford, our field commanders, went after the Haqqanis, this is a deadly group. Every time we did so, we were concerned that Bowe Bergdahl could end up dead, that they'd put out a DVD showing that they were killing him. And we lived with that. I supported the field commanders every time, but we no longer have that concern that they have this pawn that they can then play against us. So there's also a military vulnerability that the Haqqanis now face, that Taliban now faces, because they no longer hold one of our U.S. soldiers in captivity. So there's also a freedom to operate against them that perhaps we didn't fully enjoy so long as they held Bowe as prisoner.
So yeah, that was an interesting argument that I didn't hear anywhere else, that now that we have Bowe Bergdahl, we have a freer hand to operate against the Haqqani network because they can't execute him as a result. And I'm going to show just a couple more clips on the Bowe Bergdahl issue and then a couple clips on a couple other topics before I finish up the show. This is a Fox News clip where I noticed their reporter Catherine Herridge set up a couple of the arguments in favor of why this was a good release, sort of justifying it, and then had people there, especially this guy from this right-wing Heritage Institute guy, Charles Stimson, there to knock down each argument after she set it up, as I will discuss a little more. Oh, and remember what I said to remember about how John McCain said that a third of the people return to the battlefield and we can't kill all of them? Well, see how Catherine Herridge uses that stat the opposite way over in her report here.
Chris, the number of detainees who are suspected or confirmed of returning to the battlefield is nearly 1 in 3, but a former defense official believes the number is much higher because the U.S. government only knows they've gone back to terrorism when they are killed or captured.
I'm not surprised that certain detainees who are highly radicalized go back to the fight, even after they're held in continued detention in another country or even go through a rehabilitation program.
All 5 men were transferred by the military to Guantanamo in 2002. Among them, senior Taliban commanders, some with links to al-Qaeda and others associated with the worst massacres in Afghanistan. Some defenders of the swamp say they have been out of the fight for a decade.
The idea that you're an old man, so you're out of the game, doesn't really mean much. These guys are rock stars in the jihadi world, especially now that they've survived Guantanamo.
Supporters of the swap point to Israel, a country tough on terrorism. In 2011, Israel traded 1,027 prisoners for Gilad Shalit, held by Hamas. But some analysts argue the Jewish state is a unique case. It puts a premium on its military because every citizen serves. Fox News has reported from the detention camps a dozen times, and while the Bush administration transferred more than 500 detainees, less than 90 have been transferred since President Obama took office. The Taliban 5 swap may have blown any remaining goodwill on Capitol Hill to close the camps.
The political reality here is that this is the poster child of unintended consequences. Now, it has had the exact opposite effect, that it's making it harder for them, I think, at least in the short term, to do transfers.
You know, what I love about that last clip I showed there, that Charles Stimson guy saying how it's the poster child for unintended consequences. I think Guantanamo, the prisoner camp at Guantanamo, is the poster child for unintended consequences, and it has actually made the war on terror, so-called, harder because it's become a recruiting. You know, one of the first clips I ever uploaded to YouTube was Thomas Friedman, who I didn't take any clips from today, New York Times columnist, saying that Guantanamo was the anti-Statue of Liberty because it is a recruitment. You know, the Statue of Liberty was a shining light of our liberal values, and Guantanamo is like the opposite. It's like a dark reminder of our anti-liberal values in the United States. So I thought that was kind of ironic. And I also showed how Catherine Herridge said the 1 in 3 figure of how many return to the battlefield is low because we only get the confirmation of the 1 in 3 when they're captured or killed, after John McCain said, the 1 in 3 return to the battlefield and we can't kill them all, so which is it? I don't know. And on the subject of Republican hypocrisies on this whole issue, I want to show one more clip on the Bowe Bergdahl topic from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, talking about Republican hypocrisy on this issue over here.
That's exactly right. Good presidents, people like George Bush, they send people to war. They don't bring them a rescue. This is America. We rescue insurance companies and banks. And we don't trade terrorists for hostages. We trade arms for hostages.
So yeah, I didn't hear much talk about how the Reagan administration traded arms for hostages anywhere but on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher. And that's the last clip I want to play on the Bowe Bergdahl thing, although it was almost all the clips. I have a couple clips I want to play on minimum wage and then on Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. First on minimum wage, they raised the minimum wage to $15 in Seattle. And it sounds like McDonald's might raise its minimum wage to $10.10. But over on HBO, on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, their reporter Neal, let me get his name right, Neal Karlinsky, had the mayor of Seattle on and confronted him with people say it's going to be a failed experiment. And what he said, and I think it's going to be kind of a Democratic mantra in the future that I'll talk about a little more after I show that clip here.
Read and heard some of these things. Murray seems ready to turn his city into a gigantic laboratory for one of the most ambitious and quite possibly misbegotten labor market experiments in recent history.
I don't think this is a misbegotten experiment. I think we are acting as a laboratory of democracy because the federal government is not acting. The Seattle approach is the middle out. You rebuild the middle class, you get back to a vibrant economy.
I'm very concerned about this.
Restaurant owner Linda DeLello.
Yeah, so that was Mayor of Seattle, Ed Murray. I think that what he said about building from the middle out, you're going to hear that from a lot of Democrats and certainly from Hillary Clinton. That's like going to be their big campaign slogan, that And we've already heard that from Democrats somewhat, but I think building from the middle out and the minimum wage are going to be big Democratic issues coming forward. And I also want to show how Katrina vanden Heuvel from The Nation magazine, they talked about this later in the panel, and I liked how she pointed out how some corporations are good guys and some are bad guys, and the one she talked about, I'll discuss a little more after I show that clip here.
They don't hire people. The biggest employer of low-wage workers, Walmart. I mean, Walmart is being subsidized by taxpayers because their workers can't afford food or health care. The taxpayers are paying food stamps. Walmart is the most profitable company in America. So we're getting socked as taxpayers on both ends. There are enlightened businesses, Costco, StrideRite, Trader Joe's, healthy wages, healthy profits.
Big businesses with big...
Costco, StrideRite, Trader Joe's. I wonder if they'll be using the endorsement of left-wing magazine editor of left-wing magazine The Nation, Katrina vanden Heuvel, in their advertisements anytime soon. I knew Trader Joe's was kind of progressive, but I didn't know it was like Trader Joe Stalin's or whatever. But I don't know. And the last topic I want to address real quickly, or actually there's going to be a final clip from Bill Maher after this topic, but I want to show a couple clips of Hillary Clinton's interview on This Week with George Stephanopoulos with her book coming out. She was interviewed by ABC's Dianne Sawyer, and the full interview is going to be on tomorrow night on ABC. But first she talked about whether she's running for president, which is, of course, the big question. And I'll talk about that a little more after I show that clip here.
Decide whether you're running for president? You know, I'm going to decide when it feels right for me to decide, because... Still by the end of this year? Well, you know, certainly not before then. I just want to kind of get through this year, travel around the country, sign books, help in the midterm elections in the fall, and then take a deep breath and kind of go through my pluses and minuses about what I will and will not be thinking about as I make the decision. I will.
So that's still a little vague, but most people think she's running for president. I think most likely she is. And before I leave the clips of that interview, I also want to show a clip of Hillary Clinton responding to that big brouhaha I showed on LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup several weeks ago, where Republican strategist Karl Rove said at some fundraiser, I think it was, a Republican conference, that Hillary Clinton had suffered major brain damage and brought it up as an issue that she might not be fit to be president. And they raised that with Hillary Clinton in the interview, and you can see her response here.
Her age and health raised by top Republicans like Karl Rove.
You would not be human and not have a serious brain injury like this was, and take it into consideration if you're thinking about going and doing what she might do.
How is your health? It's very good, thank you. How serious was it? It was, you know, it was I think a serious concussion. The clot, in addition, if the clot had dislodged. Well, can I tell you, that was the scary point. You had trouble with vision because of the force of the fall. I had double vision for a short period of time, and I had some dizziness. So no lingering effects. No lingering effects of any kind. No. You would release your medical records if you ran for president. I would do what other candidates have done. Absolutely. Okay. And what would you like to say to Karl Rove about your brain? That I know he was called Bush's brain in one of the books written about him, and I wish him well.
So yeah, I thought that was definitely worth seeing, so I showed you that clip. And before I finish up the show, I want to show one more clip from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, where he talked about this story from this last week about these gun rights activists in Texas who have been going into restaurants openly carrying these huge almost military-style weapons. I mean, I know people I shouldn't call them assault weapons or assault rifles, because they don't fire, they're not automatic weapons, they're only semi-automatic. You have to pull the trigger for every shot. But anyway, it's even the NRA at one point came out against them, and then backtracked and said, oh, I guess you can open carry if you want. Anyway, I like this clip. So this is Bill Maher from HBO's Real Time last Friday, talking about how these gun rights activists have gone into the restaurants and comparing it to marijuana rights, and kind of saying who's more in your face with their rights, comparing the two. And I want to talk about that a little more after I show that final clip here.
It's no secret I favor marijuana rights, but I don't go to the Olive Garden and blow bong hits into people's faces. Anymore.
So I thought that was really funny, and it was an apt comparison. I don't think it was an unfair analogy between blowing bong hits in someone's face and carrying a gun into the restaurant where they're trying to eat. I don't know. I guess you can tell me what you think, but I have to finish up the show. I'm way over time. I'm like over an hour into almost to an hour and 25 minutes at this point, and I'm getting errors from the YouTube system trying to look at your comments. I look like I had about 100 people watching, and I've been looking through the comments, but they're like fading in and out. So let me look through here if I can see anything. I'm sorry. I guess I'm going to just have to ask you to show up again next week for Liberal Viewer Sunday live clip roundup at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Oh, and I am making that edited, produced video I talked about in Liberal Viewer First Wednesday last Wednesday. It's taken a little longer because there was like a second installment of this Fox News story about the Slender Man killings of these two 12-year-old girls in Wisconsin, and it took this really weird turn where, here I'll put up this is a screenshot where Fox News actually put up this chyron. Look at the bottom there. It says, Dr. Russell, that's their psychiatrist they had on, girls more likely to have hateful little minds. I think that's going to be the title of my video, girls more likely to have hateful little minds, or Fox News : girls more likely to have hateful little minds ? So look for that probably in the next few days after I figure out which will be the top video of the week. You can let me know that if you're watching live. Tell me what you think the best clip or best couple clips for the top clip of the week that I upload as an excerpt on Monday. And I appreciate all of you who showed up live for the show, and my viewers here in the United States and North America. Enjoy the end of your weekend. For those people in Europe and in Australia, New Zealand, and Ethiopia and Africa, I know have viewers. Enjoy the beginning of your week if that's the right time zone, and I guess I'll be seeing you all